we have that power in our hands to not be small in spirit and to claim ourselves. We've been here forever, as I say, and we will be here forevermore.
Hello, my LGBTQIAs, and welcome back to another episode of A Jaded Gay. I'm Rob Lovelace, and today I am a non-jaded gay because things have really cooled off here. We're fully into fall mode, which I know for some people it's depressing because the days are shorter, the weather's colder, it's a little bit more overcast, but for me, it's a very comforting time of year. I'm a bit of a homebody, no lie, and I really just like feeling cozy in my house. So I'm not upset that it's cloudier out and a little bit cooler because it really motivates me to just wear some comfy clothes, curl up on my couch under a blanket, and just watch TV all day because I need more days like that. And separate from being a homebody, I did want to do a little housekeeping up front today. So real quick, I just want to announce, if you haven't seen on the socials, recently I just launched a Discord channel, the LGBTQIA Lounge, for everybody out there. I thought it would be a really good way to keep everyone connected, to interact with the listeners a little bit more, and really create a community via this forum so people can chat and connect, because that was the whole point of me starting the podcast, to really help connect with other like-minded people in the LGBTQ plus community, because sometimes it can feel really isolating. So if you haven't checked it out already, I'd really appreciate it if you could go over there, join it, post a little hello in there, and let's start chatting. Also, just another quick reminder that we do have the Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee, and I would really appreciate if you could show any support on there. As I'm planning ahead for 2026, I'm really trying to ramp things up for the podcast, so I have been doing a little bit of social media advertising, not a lot because your boy's on a budget, and I'm also trying to upgrade some equipment. I'm afraid my laptop may go at any minute because I just had some struggles with it this morning, so fingers crossed it makes it through this recording today. I also want to get into video in the future, but I do not have the bandwidth for that yet or the equipment. And also, the job's just not jobbing, and it's really kind of taking over my life a little bit more than it should. So I'm really trying to focus more on the podcasting side of things. I would love to turn this more into a business. Selfishly, it would be great if the podcast could cover my monthly expenses, but also as I'm trying to really build this up more to reach more people, I think having a little bit of extra income from the podcast would really help to take us to the next level. So again, for the Patreon, it's as little as $1 a month, and that gets you instant access to episodes ad-free a day early. And then every month we have a fun little bonus episode. Sometimes you'll get some goodies throughout the year too. And at the $3 tier, you get a t-shirt. And at the $5 tier, you get a t-shirt and a personalized shout out on a podcast episode from yours truly. And if you're only interested in those monthly bonus episodes, you can purchase them for $3 each, although you probably spend less money by just joining one of the monthly tiers, but that's up to you. And if you don't want to do any of that, but you do just want to do a one-time donation, you can do so on Buy Me a Coffee or also on Buzzsprout, which is where the podcast is hosted on. I do have the donation link set up there too. So again, anything you can donate or feel comfortable committing to, I really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone out there who's already supported the podcast on Patreon. You are all amazing. And for November, with the holidays approaching, I thought it would be fun to do the bonus episode on the slate trope about gay men coming out on Thanksgiving. Is it a thing, or is it just a plot device on TV? Well, subscribe to the Patreon and you'll find out. Anyway, moving on from the housekeeping, let's talk about today's episode. So, as many of us know, 2025 has been a rough and tumble year, especially politically speaking, and specifically we've seen LGBTQ plus history being erased, which is very concerning. There's already very little history about us, and now there's the threat that we'll lose that. So I'm very excited to welcome on a special guest today, who is an author of LGBTQ plus historical fiction. And while it may be fictional and not the hard-hitting history many of us are accustomed to, it does really create a sense of representation from a time before members of the LGBTQ plus community were really remembered or recognized in society. So we'll get into that shortly. But before we do, you know the drill. Let's pull our tarot card. So for this episode, we drew the Sun, which is a Major Arcana card. And as a reminder, Major Arcana cards signal a big change or life lesson. And the Sun is full of masculine energy, so it's very action-oriented. It's number 19 in the Major Arcana, and in numerology, we add double digits together. So 1 plus 9 is 10, add those together, and we get 1. So glad that all those math courses from my MBA are paying off. And 10 represents the achievement of something or the end of a cycle or chapter, and 1 represents a new start and the individual. So one chapter has ended and a new one has begun. And when we draw the sun, it's shining a light on uncertain situations and providing the clarity we need, which gives us a sense of renewed optimism and understanding. And with this card being full on masculine energy, it's connecting us with our power source, which reminds us of our strength so we can take action and succeed. Again, this card is showing us the end of one cycle and the beginning of a new one. So we're coming out of a time of uncertainty, and the sun is shining on us to help us see the potential on the horizon and energize us to take action so that we can move toward outcomes that align with our happiness. And with that in mind, I am very excited to welcome our next guest. She is a New York City-based drag queen and author of The Freedom to Love. Please welcome Jeza Belle. Hi, Jeza Belle. How are you today?
Hi, I'm so excited to be here, to be with you, and this is going to be fabulous today, so thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on. I'm super excited for this topic. I think it's especially relevant given the political world we're in. We're seeing LGBTQ plus history being erased when there has been such little history typically recorded. So it's great to have an LGBTQ plus author who focuses on LGBTQ plus historical fiction to kind of create that representation in a time when we really didn't have that recorded history. So a lot to discuss here. Before we get into it, though, I do want to just ask if you could introduce yourself to the listeners, tell them a little bit about yourself, background, career, pronouns, all that fun stuff.
Sure. I am the one and only Jeza Belle, 2 words. There's lots of Jezebels out there, but there's only one Jeza Belle, right? So got to start with that. And I am a drag queen, been a comedian, produced, did a little acting, do a lot of writing, both for magazines, print and online, and have written a whole bunch of books and live in New York City. And when I'm in drag, I am she, her, hers. The rest of my life, I use male pronouns. But actually, I'm pretty open. You can use any with me, and I'm okay with that, but I try to respect everybody else's. And I'm ready to roll. Hit it.
Awesome. And for all the listeners, obviously, podcasting is not a visual platform, but it's 10 a.m. recording, and Jeza Belle is here in full red wig, full face of makeup. She came ready today, so we're going to have a great episode ahead.
Only for you.
Oh, I'm flattered. Well, I do like to ask all my guests, today, are you a jaded or non-jaded gay, and why?
I am non-jaded, and I feel like I'm non-jaded gay because there's always possibilities and potential in the world. And I just, in all things, refuse to have a dismal or dark view. I feel that anything can happen and we can make things happen. So why be jaded? Everything's before us. Even when times are bad and things are dark, we still have some kind of power and control over ourselves. And personally, I believe in a higher power, and that higher power leads me to never feel jaded and always feel full of hope and possibility.
And I definitely think we need that optimism in today's world. And I think, to your point, even when things are dark and dreary, you can take that and channel it through your creativity and put it into something productive and hopefully create some representation or some further optimism for people out there.
Especially at a time that they want us to be silent. Why would we be? That just feeds into exactly what they want. They want to diminish us. There's a movement to silence our voices. And I don't know. I got too big of a yapper to be silent. So here you go,
Well, you did touch upon your writing career a little bit up front, how you've written for some publications as well as your own novels. So I believe some of the platforms you've written for are The Huffington Post and The Advocate. So what draws you to storytelling, and how do drag and writing intersect for you creatively?
What's really fascinating is, I'll just go right back to the beginning in that I started my drag by not planning to be a drag queen. I wrote a web series about drag queen superheroes and these 3 sisters. And when I casted 2 of them, I was going to produce and direct this, found 2 wonderful drag queens and just never found anybody to play the main role. It was called Jeza and the Bells. And I wound up saying, oh, I'll just do it, even though I've never acted, never did drag, not like that. I mean, I did it once and it was a total hot mess. But I was like, I'll just step in and do it. And then after I did the podcast, what was really interesting is people started reaching out to me about writing, not just performing, but writing. And my first writing piece was from the UK. Somebody said, hey, can you write a couple of articles? And then somebody else from the UK said, can you write a column for us? And then I also got asked to write for some pieces in Asia. And that kind of started this whole writing thing. And then next thing you know, I was writing for US-based platforms, and writing for, like you said, like The Advocate. I wrote wrote a bunch for the Huffington Post, and then had my own columns in the UK and US. And then after that, I thought I need to be writing creatively as well. So that's sort of it birthed. So I started doing a lot of drag stuff, but also doing a lot of writing, and writing all in my drag name, which incidentally, not to just go totally off on a tangent, but incidentally, over the years, many people have offered to do things with my writing, but only if I would not use my drag name, which is something that I refuse to do. And so it took a while to get to the place of doing some of the things I'm doing now. And that was just out of pure, absolute refusal, because drag gave me a voice in writing that I didn't have before I did it. And so I wanted to pay honor to that. And also, I just hate anybody trying to tell me that I can't represent in the way I want to represent. So no.
And your newest novel, The Freedom to Love, is part of the Presence collection, which centers LGBTQIA plus characters in historically overlooked settings. So what inspired the series, and how do you choose the time periods or themes you explore?
The main thing for me is things that interest me, because I think if you're going to write about something, it has to be something that you have a heart connection to. So that kind of centers where I find the stories. But the reason that I wanted to write this collection was there's this whole, I mean, I alluded to it before, this movement to not only silence us, but there's like a pretend sort of thing, like we haven't existed since the beginning of time. And it's so ridiculous, because if you look at any society and any history of humanity, we are there. And by the way, we're there not just in the LGBT, we're there in the Q, we're there in the I, we're there in the A, we're there in the plus, we're there. And so, I wanted to highlight where we've been sort of forgotten.
And what was the initial spark or motivation behind The Freedom to Love? And why did you choose to set this particular love story during the era of American slavery?
So The Freedom to Love came out of wondering. I'm in a relationship. I'm 16 years with my partner, who happens to be African American, and was wondering one day, what would have happened if we met 150 years ago, which I think it's a little more than that now, 175, I think, from where this particular book is set. And I was thinking, what would have happened, because we like to think that we would have done X, Y, and Z, but we don't know, because we haven't lived in those times where there are different sets of pressures. And so I wanted to explore, how could a love story have worked back then? And now it would have been incredibly difficult, but was there any possibility? Now, we have heard historically numerous times about white men and Black women and female slaves, right? And obviously, women were raped, and there were extreme power dynamics that led some to be in quote unquote relationships, of course, but these are very uneven power structures. What would that have looked like for two men? Because I personally never heard anything about two men. And there is no way in the world you can tell me that somewhere during that time, two men, there wasn't some connection. Now, whether or not it was a rape scenario too, whether or not it was a love scenario, I just wanted to explore that and kind of intersect that with my own relationship, and just kind of see, like, hey, how could this have happened?
And in the novel, Arthur and Samson, the two main characters, their relationship is layered with emotional, social, and political tension, and it's shaped by the intersection of queer love and interracial dynamics. So with that in mind, and given the time period your book is set in, what were some of the ethical considerations or challenges you faced while writing the story?
There were tons of considerations, right? Because here I am, a white man, when I'm not in drag, writing about slavery, and writing about love existing and having to inhabit in my mind and in my heart and in my soul, in a sense, these Black characters of people who were stolen from another land, and how dehumanized they were. And so what I did not want to do is, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't completely tone deaf and insensitive to I just didn't want it to be like a Karen moment, basically. So it was really important to me I have had a phenomenal African-American editor, have eyes on this manuscript as I wrote it, which now is the novel. I had African-American male sensitivity readers and others give a look and kind of let me know where there were weak points or weirdness. Especially was really looking for where it just kind of goes tone deaf or does something that's totally off the rails, because that was never the point. This is the point. Essentially, at its heart, this is a love story, but it's so much more because it's so layered with so many issues, right? On so many levels that, it really did need eyes that went beyond me and beyond my own understanding.
And how do you navigate writing about love in a context where consent, autonomy, and power are so deeply compromised?
So in this particular book, it's compromised. All of those things are compromised. And yet that's something we have to confront, because that was the reality. And so I've been asked before, like, why would I not have done that? Like, would it have been better to not have some of that fed through the novel? But for me, it was very important to do that, because I think when we try to just completely sugarcoat or whitewash something, we really take away the experience that people have when they're treated as less than and secondary, or in this case, not even human. Right. And so, it was important for me to shine a light on those things. And yeah, it's never easy. And of course, people will walk away with probably many different feelings, but it's still important to do that, because even amongst ourselves, and I say ourselves as white men, right? It's important that we have those conversations too, and that we don't just leave race and racial conversations because we hear a lot of, oh, it happened a long time ago, get over it, and yet the repercussions are still extremely prevalent today. And yet, as white people, we're often blind to it. And so we have to sort of continue to, I think, explore this amongst ourselves, as well as with our, the brethren that are the rock of this country, that built this country.
And I know at the top of the episode, we were talking about how despite LGBTQ plus people existing forever, there really has not been much representation. It was kind of straightwashed or ignored previously to the past, let's say 100 years. That's when we might have some documented history, even though we've existed forever, but there's really not that much prior to it. So with that in mind, why is it important to center LGBTQIA plus narratives in historical contexts that have traditionally erased or ignored them?
It's important because it puts a marker in the sand and says to people, we were there. And you can go back to all sorts of ancient, and not everything was written. A lot of stuff goes by oral tradition. Sometimes you get it in pictures, right? And carvings and paintings. And we were always around. And the more we let people act like we are just a modern phenomena, the more they're going to continue to try to make us small, and not just small in numbers, because that is a calculated attempt by some, but small in spirit. And we have that power in our hands to not be small in spirit and to claim ourselves. We've been here forever, as I say, and we will be here forevermore. And so look at the current moment that we're in, right? And think about the arc of history. This is a terrible moment, and yet all moments end. And we're still going to be here. No matter what they do, no matter what happens, we will still be here when the dust settles.
Definitely. And how do you hope readers engage with the freedom to love, and what conversations are you hoping it will spark?
Brittany here, host of Recovery Cast, Recovery.com's podcast where every week we interview influential people about their real lived addiction and mental health recovery stories. In a world that too often focuses on people's worst moments, we want to celebrate the joy found in recovery and the life that's possible on the other side of getting help. Whether you're in recovery, curious about it, or just want to hear inspirational stories from people like Zach Clark, Allison Stoner, Hillary Phelps, and so many more, Recovery Cast was made for you. Recovery Cast. Listen and subscribe now.
I hope that people do a number of things. I hope that they think about how important it is. I think it's very important that we have all kinds of characters in our books, and that we don't just look at people who look and sound like us all of the time. And, historical fiction has its lovers, but people usually like a lot of contemporary stuff too. And I think it's important for us to not negate. We only got to where we are because of what's happened before. So I hope we have some conversation around the importance of exploring the past. And then I do hope that we dive into these issues of race and in this particular one, gender, and some of the others, sexuality, and have some tough conversations, but also celebrate the fact that we made it, and we're going to continue to 1,000 years from now. They're going to say, "Oh, we're doing this study on this drag queen was a gay man and wrote all these books about history, and even then they were around, right?" And we were, and we will be.
And given the current state of our country, do you see any parallels between the themes in your book and what we're experiencing today?
Yes. And if you look at my first book, my first novel, not my first book, but my first novel in this collection is called Blood Rouge. And it's about a gender fluid young man in Germany during the 1930s. And a lot of what happens and some of the things that this character is confronting parallels what's happening today. Then we go to this one, The Freedom to Love, right? And a lot of what happens, and there's this part where Lincoln's giving a speech, and if you look at the most wicked character in the book is the mother, Anna, and she's just the most racist, vile. Am I allowed to cuss on here? I don't know if I am, but yeah, she's the most racist bitch. And I've heard this from a lot of people. She is the nastiest piece of work that people say they've read in a long time. And yet, in many ways, she's our current leader, right? Or our leaders. And so there's great parallel to what's happened in the past and through these books to what's happening today.
And with that in mind, what does the freedom to love mean to you, both personally and politically? Personally,
it means to me, it just connects back to my own relationship. And I just think about the fact that, it's 150, 60, 75 years since pre-Civil War and the Civil War. And in my own relationship, watching the struggles that my own partner lives through that, frankly, I was oblivious to before I was in a relationship with him. It touches me on a personal level, this book, because it's like our love is transcendent. And I'm so, this is somebody who truthfully can do more than anybody I've ever known. He's smarter than anybody and better in so many ways than anybody. And yet oftentimes doesn't get the same opportunities because of the color of his skin. So this book resonates to me with that. And I tried to add some modern, reflection in this, or kind of spin a little of it on its head, especially around this idea of choices, when there weren't a whole lot of choices. And yet choices still for a lot of people in this country are limited. And that just kind of resonates with me on a personal level. And politically, I guess I'm beating a drum, but I just want us to stand up and continue to declare our presence. And I don't care how many anti-whatever bills they write. No matter what happens, we are still going to be here. And so we've got to use our voice to let them know we're not going anywhere, whatever that voice looks like. And art is a voice. And this is, my way of making a statement, and standing for people who oftentimes don't have voice. And so my other books, and, I have another book that's a nonfiction that was highly controversial. And that was grounded in having a voice for people who can't find a voice. And really all of my books are, in a sense, they all sort of tie through with that. They all wind up being, which I find weird because I never have set out to write something controversial, yet every one of my books winds up landing me, getting me death threats and winds up all over the place, telling me how, shocking, how dare I? But I think if we don't pull back the layers and look at taboos and question things and wonder what really was and have, intellectual conversations, we're sort of defeated from the get-go.
And connecting it back to the tarot, the sun, again, this card comes to us as one cycle ends, so a new one can begin. And it's shining light on the uncertainty and energizing us to take action and move toward outcomes that align with our happiness. And the sun is all about success and clarity and optimism. And as it relates to today's episode, Jeza Belle is certainly a beacon of optimism, both personally and through her work. Like she said, LGBTQ plus people have existed forever, but were not always recognized. But now we're moving into a new cycle where our community is getting the recognition it deserves and is continuing to make history. And despite recent threats against that, we're continuing to have our voices heard through art, politics, and society, and we won't be silenced. And that's the key, to make sure that we are continuing to raise our voices, because what we are living through now will be history one day. So it's important to make sure we meet that movement and that future generations recognize that we are here and continuing to push for progress for the LGBTQ plus community. And even if you're not a creator or activist, you can still make history by being authentically yourself and allowing yourself to experience queer joy, because that's one of the greatest forms of resistance. And while it might seem scary at first, the sun reminds us that we are strong and we will succeed. And beyond our own power and success, we will experience happiness. Well, Jeza Belle, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been a really insightful and inspiring episode. As we're coming towards the end of this today, can you read an excerpt from The Freedom to Love?
Absolutely. Let me kind of give a little bit of background. So Arthur is our white plantation owner. He has actually inherited this from his family. Samson is his childhood friend who is also a slave, and they are in love. And so at one point, things happen. Don't want to give a lot away, but they Samson winds up running away rather than being killed. And Arthur eventually joins him on the run. And at this point, they are on the bank of the Ohio River. And I just want to pick up from here. They approached the bank gingerly. The rocks nearest the shoreline jabbed into their soles. And once they dipped their ankles in, they began to wade slowly out into the water. "Thank you for coming with me, Arthur," Samson said over the sounds of the river as the water went from their ankles to their knees. The powerful rush of liquid against Samson's legs surprised him, as the river had looked so calm when they entered, at least from his viewpoint above the surface. He did not for 1 second guess the force that lay under its murky abyss because it was unseen from the land. While Samson had urged Arthur to leave him miles back, he was grateful for his company now because he did not know crossing the river would come with his knees that knocked together from both cold and fear. Joy crept into Samson's heart. They were almost there, so close to Ohio he could hardly believe it. Just a few more minutes. Once they made it past this deep pool, all they would need to do is to get over those shallow rapids on the other side, and then Samson would finally and fully be free. Tears of expectation formed in the corner of Samson's eyes. I never dared hope for this moment to be true, but now that it's here, I cannot help but burst with excitement. Arthur looked back at him, and the two smiled warmly at one another. He noted how Arthur's eyes watered at the sight of the specks from his own eyes. However, the moment and all that it meant was short-lived, as Samson's tears did not have time to fall, because at that moment the sound of howling dogs broke over the rustling waters. "They have come," Samson screamed as he turned around to see the dogs had come out from the trees where Arthur and he had emerged only moments before. The canines began to gnash and foam at the mouth, and they seemed to fly the distance that separated them from the shore until the pack was only a few feet away from the shivering, river-soaked men. The blue tick snapped and yipped from the shoreline before two of them dove into the water and swam out at Samson and Arthur. The bumps on Samson's arms burst into panic, like the terror that seized at his chest. "They're here," Samson heard Clarkson yell from atop a horse as he burst into view. And next he watched as Flicker and Piglet on their own horses rushed for the river. They were followed by two slave men that Samson did not know. Samson turned back to Arthur and cried out, "What do we do?" Arthur, who was just behind Samson, turned his own head back toward the rushing pack of hounds. Then suddenly he appeared to falter. Samson looked on helplessly as Arthur, who had lost his footing, fell over headfirst into the water, his clothes scattered in the wind, then rushed right past Samson's legs. "Samson!" Arthur yelled as he thrashed in the water. The current lifted him, and within seconds, Arthur's body was rushed downstream as his arms flailed violently in the air. Samson stood frozen as Arthur's body was instantaneously carried away. Though his arms flew wildly and his shrinking head bobbed in and out of the foaming current, nothing he did stopped the river's forceful current from carrying him away, until at last his body faded into the distance and then around a bend in the river. All possibility, all hope vanished in an instant. "Oh, Arthur," Samson started to cry, but there was no time left for concern over Arthur's safety. He was gone. There was not a spare second to mourn what could have been. With Arthur already assigned to fate, this moment was Samson's one and only chance to grasp at freedom. So he threw his clothes into the water, then dove in head first and tried to swim with all his might toward the rapid shallows. It was futile, as within mere seconds, though the dogs had retreated from the deeper water and swam back to the other side, Flicker and Piglet's horses rushed into the river, and they were alongside Samson. There was no place left to turn, as he was hemmed in on both sides. He gave up, and his body was dragged back out of the water by his arms until they dumped him hard onto Kentucky's dry land.
That was an excerpt from The Freedom to Love by Jeza Belle. Well, once again, thank you so much, Jeza Belle, for coming on today. This has been a great episode. Can you tell all the listeners where they can connect with you and read your books?
Yes, absolutely. We'll go to iamjezabelle.com and you can find just about anything. And look for me on Instagram at iamjezabelle also, and you'll see all my events, everything that's going on. Hosting a quarterly Bookalicious. It's an LGBTQIA virtual reading event where I try to bring a vast variety of authors and give them an opportunity, a platform, people who don't always get a chance to read for other people, and then they give away free books. So look out for Bookalicious, and then be looking for my book, my newest book called Abomination, the story of David and Jonathan. I think you'll hopefully like that one too. It is the biblical bisexual love story. And so, yeah, once again, stirring it up.
Awesome. And all that information will be in the show notes, so definitely be sure to check it out. And for the podcast, you know the drill. Any questions or feedback, you can reach out to me, rob@ajadedgay.com. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 5 stars only. I greatly appreciate it. For more information on this topic, our guest, episode resources, blog posts, merchandise, links to socials, all that fun stuff, you can visit the website, ajadedgay.com. You can connect with the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, Discord, SoundCloud, and YouTube at @ajadedgaypod. You can follow me personally, Rob Loveless, on Instagram at Rob_Loveless. And if you're feeling generous, consider supporting the podcast on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. That gets you instant access to episodes ad-free a day early, plus exclusive monthly bonus content. Or if you just want to access the monthly bonus episodes, you can purchase them for $3 each. And if you're scared of commitment, don't worry, I get it. You can make a one-time donation on Buy Me a Coffee for any dollar amount, and both the Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee are at @ajadedgaypod. And remember, every day is all we have, so you gotta make your own happiness. Bye!
And that just kind of resonates with me on a personal level. And the other half, what was the other part you asked me? I got so deep into it.
No worries.